The Galactic Concordance had made many mistakes in its 3,000-year history, but assigning a human to manage the Apex Predator Youth Integration Program might have been its greatest miscalculation, or its most brilliant accident. Mira Jalen stood at the edge of the southern courtyard, watching chaos unfold with the patience of someone who had seen worse. Much worse. 17 juvenile apex predators from 12 different worlds were engaged in what the Concordance officially called competitive socialization exercises, and what Mira called a disaster waiting to happen. Tiruk, a Vexorian youth with obsidian scales and eyes like molten gold, had just pinned a Crithian cub to the ground. The Crithian's packmates circled, their hackles raised, bioluminescent stripes pulsing with aggressive intent. The other species, Dralthine, Morvox, Skellig, and more watched with predatory interest, waiting to see which alliance would form, which hierarchy would emerge from blood and dominance. The supervisory drones hovered uselessly overhead, their diplomatic AI protocols frozen by indecision. Violence was prohibited, but instinct was instinct. The Concordance had spent decades trying to socialize these cubs, teaching them unity and cooperation. Every attempt had failed. Predators, it seemed, only understood one language. Mira took a single step forward. She didn't shout. She didn't raise a weapon. She simply brought 2 fingers to her lips and whistled. The sound cut across the courtyard like a blade through silk, sharp, clear, and utterly commanding. It wasn't loud, but it carried a frequency that seemed to bypass the ears entirely and strike directly at something more primal. Every single cub froze mid-motion. Tiruk's claws, poised above the Crithian's throat, hung suspended in air. The circling pack stopped as if time itself had stuttered. Across the courtyard, a Dralthine youth who had been climbing a support pillar to gain tactical advantage simply stopped, clinging motionless to the metal. Then, one by one, they sat. Tiruk was the first. He released the Crithian cub and lowered himself onto his haunches, his golden eyes fixed on Mira, with an intensity that would have made most beings reach for a weapon. But Mira didn't reach for anything. She simply waited. The others followed. The Crithian pack sat in formation. The Dralthine descended and took position. Even the Skellig twins, who had been wrestling in the corner, disentangled themselves and sat in respectful silence. 17 apex predators. 17 beings bred and evolved to hunt, to kill, to dominate. All sitting quietly, watching a single human female who stood barely 1.6 meters tall. Ambassador Kelthric, observing from the administrative balcony, felt his respiratory organs seize. He had been assigned to evaluate this human's performance, to determine whether the Concordance's desperate experiment had merit. What he was witnessing defied every protocol, every psychological model, every understanding of predator behavior. Impossible, he whispered to his aide. She issued no pheromone command, no sonic disruptor, no neural override. How? His aide, a younger Thexian who had studied human culture, spoke quietly. She whistled. Ambassador. I know she whistled, but why did they obey? The aide hesitated. Perhaps because she expected them to. In the courtyard, Mira began to walk slowly between the seated cubs. Her boots made soft sounds against the stone. She paused before Tiruk, looking down at the young Vexorian who outweighed her by at least 80 kilograms and possessed claws that could shred duralloy plating. You're better than this, she said simply. Tiruk's scales rippled confusion, perhaps, or shame. On his world, strength was everything. Dominance was survival, yet this small, soft creature with no claws, no fangs, no armor, had stopped him with a sound. You think you were proving strength? Mira continued, her voice carrying across the silent courtyard. You were proving fear. A growl started deep in Tiruk's chest, but Mira didn't flinch. She crouched down, putting herself at eye level with a being that could kill her in seconds. Real predators don't need to prove anything, she said. They know what they are. The greatest hunter in my world's history was a species that learned to work together. They learned that the pack was stronger than the individual. They learned patience, strategy, trust. She stood and addressed all of them now. You're here because your species are the apex of your worlds, unmatched, undefeated, and that's exactly why you're failing. She let that sink in. You've never had to cooperate because you've never had to. But the galaxy doesn't care about your individual strength. Out there, she gestured toward the sky. There are threats that would swallow your entire worlds. Threats that laugh at apex predators. Mira began walking again, her path taking her through the seated cubs. My species wasn't the strongest on our world. We weren't the fastest, or the most poisonous, or the best camouflaged. We survived because we learned to work together. We learned to turn competitors into allies. And we learned that true strength isn't about dominating those around you. It's about elevating them. True strength. She stopped at the center of the courtyard and turned slowly, meeting each pair of eyes. I don't need you to fear me. I don't need you to submit to me. I need you to be what you were meant to be, not individual predators fighting over scraps, but a unified force that nothing in this galaxy can stand against. The silence stretched for long seconds. Then Tirak stood. He moved toward the Curthian cub he had pinned, and extended a clawed hand, the Vexorian gesture of respect between warriors. The Curthian stared, confused, then accepted. One by one, the others began to rise, approaching each other not with aggression but with cautious curiosity. On the balcony, Ambassador Kelthric watched in stunned silence as the impossible unfolded before him. The human had done in minutes what decades of concordant psychology had failed to achieve. "What is she?" he asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. His aide smiled grimly. "She's human, Ambassador. And I think the galaxy is just beginning to understand what that means." Below, Mira Jalen whistled again, softer this time, almost gentle. The cubs looked up at her, and she smiled. "Good," she said. "Now, let's try that exercise again. Together this time." And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the threats she had spoken of continued their slow advance toward concordance territory, unaware that humanity had just begun teaching the galaxy's apex predators a new way to hunt.